We're in an odd place right now with Helldivers the game, and the last few days have ushered in even more questions than answers, with strange announcements, even stranger results, all kind of resulting in players looking at the game asking, when? If you want to help support the channel, please hit subscribe. And with that out of the way, let's dive on in. It's been an odd past few days for Helldivers 2, with things happening all over and covering all aspects of the game, with many of these things leaving us with more questions than answers. So with that in mind, let's just go ahead and dive on in. Oh, also, full disclosure, my IRL job was insane today, so I'm gonna attempt to do this video basically unscripted, so if I'm missing some info or I mess up something a little bit, just go easy on me, okay? All right. Anyways, first up has to be the extremely rare temporary outage message we saw community manager Baskinator post in the character of the Helldivers 2 universe, stating that we should expect temporary outages as we optimize the logic circuits for freedom. However, one important tidbit to pay attention to is that this message basically says that we would be unable to purchase or spend super credits in-game during this maintenance period. Now, truth be told, I've been with this game since the very early days, and looking back on it, I think I can remember back-end outage messages once, maybe twice since the game launched back in February 2024. So to see one of these things had a large part of the community speculating what it could be. I mean, were we looking at the installation and implementation of EAC, or Easy Anti-Cheat, in place of GameGuard? Was this to do with the whispers of an infinite credits glitch that were circling around? Not even close.
And now for something completely different.
Because the studio hit us with a support incoming message this morning saying that they were dropping a small hotfix for some WWise audio fixes. By the way, WWise is the sound engine HD2 uses, which they then follow up with a follow-up message saying basically, hey, everything's good and the game is back up and running. Okay, so I guess first up is the hotfix itself, which has to be the shortest and smallest patch we've ever seen. As this Reddit post says, all of this for an effing audio fix. And, you know, ultimately the whole thing left a lot of people scratching their heads. The patch was 71.4 megs in size. So, you know, when compared to previous patches, which number up into the gigs, this thing was minuscule. Also, when we look back on the incoming outage post and that mention of not being able to spend super credits to then no mention of what was going down during this 2-hour window, ultimately receiving the WWise hotfix notice, all of it equaled, it was really odd. But hey, let's keep this circus of oddities going, because I know a lot of us have been wondering when Johan would be reappearing on the Unfiltered Reddit for his promised AMA 2-week follow-up. And just to kind of throw this out there as a reminder, he said in his first AMA conclusion, quote, "I will report back once every other week, starting this week, where we are, what our thoughts are, and how we are moving forward." When is Johan going to respond has been a building topic, and if my math is right, this past weekend should have been his next response, and it came and went with nothing posted. So, community members started tagging mods over in the main HD2 Discord asking, where was Johan? And was the team at Arrowhead using the official announcement they made on May the 8th as a qualifying response from Johan? And apparently, they were. As according to Baskinator, that was his response because it was drafted with his input.
Right.
Now, after Johan's first round of AMAs landed with a resounding thud for many in the Helldivers community, basically crushing players' hopes of more progression and customization and such, to many, it felt like Arrowhead just kind of tagged onto this narrative that it was actually Johan's response, because letting him loose again on the Unfiltered Reddit could lead to a whole new round of largely tone-deaf statements made to the community, further enraging an already unsettled, let's call it that, unsettled player base. But after what I saw with the AMA and then their official statement, I was already thinking the studio would try to do this, and they would try to qualify this as his official next appearance. And it's a shame it went down like this, because it's one more thing to add to the trash bin of words said with no follow through. A few days back, I dropped a couple of videos mentioning the CGW or Custom Galactic War, and since then, I've been in contact with members of their mod team requesting that they hop into my video comment sections and take the time to answer your pressing questions, because you ladies and gents seem to have a metric crapload of them. Also during that time, we received a massive post from the CGW team on Reddit spelling out all sorts of specifics for the mod itself, ranging from the launcher to the overall basis for creating the mod and pretty much everything in between. I will say this mod is not going to be to everyone's taste, although from what I've seen, it looks absolutely epic. I'd also like to say to take the time to create a post of this length takes dedication, and I salute the team for going through it. However, one of the points they stressed, and I'm mentioning it now because I've seen it a lot in my comment section, is the fact that with the release of the CGW, it seems to have attracted even more negative feedback at Arrowhead and how they conduct their Galactic War and how Joel and his team acts as the GM or Games Master. Now, let me first say this. I completely agree with you. The Galactic War inside of HD2 is in a woefully bad state, and it needs a complete and total overhaul. I also agree that if Arrowhead wanted to, they could take a few pointers from the CGW and implement those into their version in the game to instantly kick up the Galactic War quite a few notches. All that said, the team over at the CGW always knew this passion project was going to create a bit of friction between their modded version and Arrowhead's vision. They just weren't ready for how controversial the CGW would end up being, often spurring on very heated comments and posts directed squarely at Arrowhead. Now, ultimately, you can say what you want. I've never been against that, but I think what the CGW team is asking is for us, the players, to take the time to separate the two and to not use one as a rationale for popping off on the other. And I think you know what I'm saying here. Now for something really out there, and this photo and post has shown up with members of the Arrowhead team, including Johan, Michael, and what I think are Shams and Felix, dropping Helldivers salutes with a group of fans, which I've got to say is nothing out of the ordinary until you read the post below it saying that this photo was taken in Shanghai and that it was taken at a meet and greet that had just finished up there. The post containing the picture also went on to make a lot of statements about a range of things, from the Coyote nerfs to the IFV arriving in the game, Johan's new game he's working on, and even what country the upcoming Helldivers 2 movie would be shot in, all of which I cannot confirm, so I'm not going to show you those posts. So let's just make sure that much is clear. Now, this earned a response from the team over in the official HD2 Discord, going on to say that some of the studio higher-ups were indeed right now over in China, but that there's been some confusion and misinformation about what was actually being posted. We also saw a full point counterpoint response post on the Unfiltered Reddit, labeling initially all of this as misinformation, which has now been changed over to speculation. Things like, for example, how the original post said that when asked, these devs in Shanghai said they didn't know who Arrowhead was, has now since been countered in this post and struck through. So in keeping with today's video theme, it's definitely odd for sure. And this whole thing seems to be a fluid topic that I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on. I'm also fully expecting a DM from Mushroom by the Oak Tree outlining all of his findings and thoughts on this a little later tonight. Now, I reported on this a while back, but Tencent purchased a near 16% stake in Arrowhead Game Studios somewhere in mid-2024 for a deal then valued around $80 million. Which netted them, Tencent, an employee, getting appointed to the board at Arrowhead. But overall, this purchase went through because, according to Johan, this would open up opportunities for Arrowhead to the Chinese gaming market, which he said was, quote, the holy grail in the current video games industry. This Reddit post does mention that the team from Arrowhead were there at the invite of Tencent, but has since been struck through. But considering their close ties, between the studio and investor, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. Although again, this is just speculation. Sony is back in the headlines with at least one piece of juicy news, starting off with the point that it has now been said that CEO Herman Holst was heard at a recent town hall solidifying the strategy that PlayStation will be moving away from bringing first-party single-player games to PC. Now, I reported on this back in March when it was rumored to be in the pipeline for Sony, but now, according to Jason Schreier, who's, by the way, been spot on with his previous reports, this looks to be the way forward for Sony. There's also been a secondary piece of Sony news flying around having to do with hackers hijacking PlayStation accounts through customer support. And I've got to say, this is nothing new, so I'm not really going to dive into all the details here. It's safe to say that if you post images of, say, like receipts and include any other piece of personal information with it, you're opening up yourself to these attacks. So stay safe out there, divers, and keep anything that can be used to impersonate you off of social media. And finally, with how the community response was leading up to and, of course, after the EXO Experts Warbond released, along with those sweeping buffs to enemy durable damage, I know a lot of you out there were expecting not just for words to arrive via some sort of vague studio announcement, but for actions to be taken weeks ago. And at this point, I think it's fair to say that we're all out here waiting on some sort of patch to try to correct what's happened. But, you know, every day I search for it, I ask others if they've seen anything about it, and sadly, the answer I keep receiving is no. However, expect me to post any news we get on a real game-changing patch incoming whenever it becomes available. But for now, I turn to you, my valuable viewers out there, for your thoughts and feedback. The CGW, odd maintenance, hotfix, and more were all topics for today, and I invite you to drop a comment and let's get a discussion going. If you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe and ring the notifications bell to receive my future upload alerts. By the way, if you're on mobile, you can really help promote this video and channel to others by taking advantage of the swipe to hype function. And before I go, as always, a massive thanks and shout out goes out to all of our hardcore channel members. Until the next one, this is LtBuzzLitebeer, signing off.